Hello, friends. Welcome to another edition of the Lovecast. You're listening to episode 134, and this is an interview. This is an epic episode, by the way. I have my lovely bride, Taylor, back on the podcast. Say hi, Taylor.
Hi, guys.
It's good to be with you guys. Taylor and I have a special treat in store for this episode of the Lovecast. We are interviewing a couple of celebrities. We are interviewing the Carpenter twins, and I'll explain who they are in a minute. But I'm so happy that you guys have tuned back in to the Lovecast. We're all still alive. We've made it till today, and we're gonna be getting into some really awesome subject material tonight. And so, if you're listening to this, you may not know who the Carpenter twins are, but you will by the time this podcast episode is over. And I would encourage you to stay tuned in, just to lean in and listen to their stories and what they are learning and who they are, because I guarantee you that there's going to be something very applicable to your journey and to your life by listening to what they have to say. These people were born to communicate, and they have a message for you. So lean in, enjoy this podcast, and if it speaks to you, let us know. Okay. So with all of that said, I wanted to introduce a couple of very incredible people, Jessica and Tori Carpenter. They are actually twins. They are twins, and they are coming to us remotely from the state of Idaho. So Jessica and Tori, say hello.
Hey, guys.
Hey, it's good to be here.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, I've had the opportunity. I think Jessica, you and I connected initially, right?
Yes.
And we started doing some coaching work together, and then I was introduced to your sister Tori through you.
Yeah.
And you guys are twins. And,
we are, yes.
Yes, and my wife is also a twin, has an identical twin. I've actually never known twins before, other than I've ran into twins here and there, but I don't think I ever really knew twins until I met my wife. And then it's incredible, just the fact that there's another human being on the planet with the exact DNA, the exact same DNA. It's just a kind of a strange concept for me. So what I'd like to do, before we get into the meat of what we're going to be talking about, I just kind of would love to have you guys introduce yourselves, to tell us a little bit about who you are, but talk a little bit about twinning. I think Taylor I'm sure she'll have some things to say about twins, but yeah.
Yeah, let the experienced one ask the first question. So as an identical twin myself, I know, my sister and I's relationship has changed so much as we've gotten older. And this is kind of a good way for you guys to introduce yourselves too. But could you guys maybe talk a little bit about your relationship growing up and how that's kind of changed as you've been in adulthood as identical twins?
Yeah, so we've always been close our entire life. We kind of joked we were really the built-in best friends. And if time has done anything, it's just created a deeper bond between us. And then especially experiencing all that we've been through the past year. We joke, because I'm married now and Tori's not, but she jokes all the time, Jaren, you can have Jessie, but she's my soulmate. So our relationship has definitely only deepened over the years. That's what I'd say.
Yeah, and I would say that, Jess and I, it's interesting, up until she got married this summer, we've actually always lived together. Well, I guess we kind of do now still, but it was really interesting. Jessie's my best friend, but like she said, we always had this built-in best friend. And it's definitely become a deeper bond, but it was really interesting to watch her fall in love and get married while I remained single. And Taylor, I don't know if you experienced that or
I did. Who's older?
I'm older by 13 minutes.
So I'm older too by 2 minutes, and my sister got married first. So
yeah, it's super interesting. we've obviously both dreamt about falling in love our entire lives. And it was thrilling and wonderful to watch her fall in love. But it almost felt like a loss to me a little bit, because I just had this close connection with Jessie. We call each other womb mates.
Yeah.
And then she falls in love and gets married, and I am still single. So it was a really interesting process.
Yeah, my sister and I aren't as close. And so when she got married, it was more of like the first time we had this thing where like if my sister got a new haircut, I'd be like, you should try bangs so I know if they'll look good on me too. And so when she got married, it was kind of that, like, it was the first time I felt like, oh, like, I guess this is what it's going to be like to get married. And kind of, it felt really weird.
Mm-hmm.
Up until that point,
Yeah.
everything was the same. Like, we never had any, like, we graduated within the same year from college, did everything. So that was kind of the first time that she just did something totally different.
Yeah,
that's our story, because we've done everything together until I got married. That was the first real change in our twinship, because we had gone to school together through high school and college. I mean, we both got scholarships to play at the same university. We never lived apart. And so my dating and then getting married was the first real difference that was of any significance in our relationship. It worked out great for me, but Tori definitely felt sad.
No, it worked out great for me too, because now I love her husband. I feel like he's my brother, and it's great. But at first it felt, for me, it felt a little bit isolating, and it felt like a little bit of a loss, because all of a sudden she was doing everything with someone else.
Yeah, Tori would say, like, I feel like I'm going through a divorce.
Well, it did sort of feel that way. Like, it kind of, it did feel like a divorce a little bit. And then what's interesting is our grandmas our grandma is also an identical twin. So my mom's mom is an identical twin, and they experienced the same thing. They, one of them, the older one, got married first, and they were very, very, very close, and they had a similar experience. So it's really fun though. I mean, it has its ups and downs, but being a twin is really fun. And people always ask me, what's it like being a twin? Do you like being a twin? And I think that's such a funny question, because we've never known anything else.
That's what I told Jamal. He's like, what should we ask them? And I was like, well, if you ask them what it's like to be a twin, they're going to tell you we don't know, because we don't know any different.
Yeah.
We've all
right. Yeah.
I tell people that all the time. I'm like, I don't know any different, so I can't help you.
Yeah.
Well, so I know this about Taylor, that her and her sister sometimes have like a little rivalry thing going on, or
not sometimes.
Well, all the time. But I mean, other than all the time, there's in the past, like when you guys were growing up, I know you know, Taylor and her sister would have, you know, like a little competitive kind of clashes a little bit, you know, but you guys see, I don't know if that's true of you, but I guess my question would be, what do you guys ever fight? Do you ever like get on each other's nerves or bicker, kind of like siblings do? Or is it just like, you guys are just like, man, best friends, no problems, everything's great?
Yeah, it's funny. We definitely have arguments. Like, we have, there's things in us that bother each other, but
like, we can get irritated with each other,
but we don't really fight. And if we do fight, at least between Jess and I, it always ends up
and then the anger doesn't hardly ever last, and then we get mad that we made each other laugh, and then the tension is diffused. But we get irritated with each other, but no, we don't really fight. I think we used to, but not so much anymore.
Okay, so here's a question. How are you guys different? You know, because everybody assumes twins are just alike, everything's the same.
Besides hair color.
Yeah, I know. Right. Taylor is Taylor and Blake, her sister, are very different.
Jamal actually, when he met my sister for the first time, I wasn't there yet. It was one of the only times in our life together that he got somewhere before me, and he actually could feel my sister's energy and realized that it wasn't me.
Oh my gosh, that is awesome.
So we're very different, but yeah, how are you guys different?
Well, I will answer that first. Tori has been a lifelong student. She's only ever been in school. And she's the kind of person who, like, as far as education goes, she's like disappointed with a B. And I'm like, C's get degrees. So that's a huge difference between the two of us. She's very career minded, and I've not really ever been so much. So that's kind of a huge difference between the two of us. That's I think like the number one for me, at least. Like, Tori loves school. I'm like, yeah, whatever. Do you need it? And Tori, what would you say?
I would say that Jessie's very creative. She's the artist. She creates, she composes. She has a very creative mind, and I don't at all. I really don't. And so, like, she bakes and she cooks and she sings, and she's definitely the artist, and I would not say that I am. I'm not that.
Yeah, and also another interesting thing, which I think this has changed in the trauma that we've experienced recently, but when we were in college, we had to take the Myers-Briggs personality test for a class, and she was 94% extroverted and I was 93% introverted. So that is also a huge difference. Like, she was the social butterfly, and I'm like, I don't ever want to leave home if I don't have to. So
Interesting, fascinating. Wow. Well, in addition to being twins, and this is something that I'm and Taylor and Taylor makes fun of me a lot. And one of the things that she makes fun of me about is she says that I'm not an athlete. However, I'm a huge fan of sports.
Can you explain why I say that you're not an athlete so I don't look like a jerk?
I mean, why don't you tell everybody?
Okay, so it's not that he's not fit and doesn't work out. It's not that he's lazy. He works out and does all of that, and he has the mentality of an athlete. He's just never played organized sports for more than like one season.
Yeah,
I
played a couple seasons of
yeah
in my athletic career. I had a couple seasons in my athletic career.
And it's one of those things where like my sister and I grew up playing soccer, and then we played volleyball, and I ran cross country, and then as adults we run marathons and I hike, and there's just this drive to like compete and always do more, and like even if you're not competing against someone else, you're competing against yourself. And I think just that competitive drive with Jamal, which you guys probably could understand just even getting to know him, is just he's very soft and gentle. And I mean, unless you watch the Ohio State Buckeyes play, you would never know that he has like a competitive streak in him. So that's why I say you're not an athlete. Yeah.
Totally. I don't have that same, the mentality, of course, except for the Buckeyes. I do get, but one of my favorite movies is like Rudy. If you're familiar with Rudy, I love that story. And like, as far as I'm a huge fan of college athletics. I think there's just something about college athletes and that whole time period and coaching and all the things that go into, from the time you're a freshman to a senior, you just become a completely different person. I've always been just really intrigued with the entire industry and sports, and I love college football. But I'm just always impressed when I meet people who are athletes, but also college athletes. So you guys, both of you guys, grew up obviously playing sports from the time you were probably just little but you also played collegiate basketball. You guys were on scholarship, right? And played college basketball for 3 or 4 years, or I would imagine. But I would love to hear about what is it like being college athletes.
Well, really quick, you want to hear a funny story?
Yeah, I was just going to say that.
So our freshman year of college, we played basketball at Northwest University in the Seattle area. And previously, like right before we moved over there, so late August, Jessie broke her left ankle. So she ended up redshirting that year because she had to have surgery and all that. So I started the season without her. She was still around and present on the team and everything. She just wasn't competing. Well, then 4 days into the season, I broke my left ankle. And it was this weird thing. And all of our teammates they would always call it twingeries, that we had twingeries.
We had twingeries. So that was a really interesting experience to start college off with. We were both on crutches. We were both in the walking boots on the same leg. And that was weird. Like, oh my gosh, okay, we're taking this twin thing to a whole nother level. So that's how we started our collegiate career. But it was an amazing experience, and I'm so glad that I had Tori to do it all with and to experience it all with, because the demand, which anybody watching this who plays college anything, it is next level intense. Like, high school's over, you are getting your scholarship is your payment, you work for the university. And so it's a whole new beast, it's a whole new monster, and it sucks up your social life, your time, your freedom, but it was worth it.
Yeah, and then I would add and say that, so now I actually now work in college athletics, and I went to a conference earlier this year, and there was a speaker. She was an athletic director at a Division III school, and she had this really great speech, and she said something that really resonated with me. And I look back over my college years when I played, and this really rang true for me then. And then even now that I work in college athletics, she said that college athletics is about human development. And she goes, if you're in college athletics for any other reason, you're not going to make it, and you're not going to make a difference, because at the end of the day, we want to develop human beings, and that's what sports is all about. And we use athletics as an avenue to do that, but we're developing people. And so when we were playing in college, I felt like that was true. Like, our coaches and our teammates and even the administrators, they wanted to see us graduate. They wanted to see us be successful. And then now that I work in college athletics, it's the same thing. You know, we want to see kids succeed and live great lives beyond college athletics, because it doesn't last forever. And so I would say that for me, college athletics has really showed me that it's all about human development.
I love that. That's incredible. I think that's why I love college athletics, especially the most. But since you guys are all, you know, I know Taylor, you grew up, you know, being on the club sports and traveling, and just was very involved in it. I just would like, okay, if you had to boil it down to one thing, what is the one thing that being an athlete instilled in you personally? So that's the first part of the question, and this is for everybody here, except for me. So what did being an athlete teach you personally? Like, what's the one thing you'll take away from it? Secondly, who is your favorite coach and why?
That's a great question. I guess right off the bat, without giving it much thought, for me, athletics, especially in the high school and college years, because we were on a really good team in high school. We made it to state every year. So it wasn't just like, oh, it's time for basketball season. It was, no, let's try to win a trophy at state. And so it really taught me commitment outside of yourself. Like, I can't just not show up to practice, because then I'm screwing my team over and I'm screwing my coach over. And just the importance of how important you were to a team. And then, you know, it's like when you're gone, your absence is really, you're needed. So that's kind of my big takeaways in life now. I realize and recognize a lot, like, I don't want to do this, but this person's kind of depending on me. So out of self-respect, I'm just gonna, you know, go out of my way here. In an appropriate way, you know, like, I'm not going to give of myself in an unhealthy way, but just to know, okay, there's something bigger than me here that I'm going to commit to.
Jess, I'm interested on who you are going to say was your favorite coach.
It's a toss up between two, and I know it's probably the same two for you, but I'm probably going to say my college coach, Coach Ken Crawford at Northwest University, because he just is an amazing coach and an amazing human. And he just knew how to coach girls, because there's a difference. We had coaches who were like, girls just want to be coached like guys, and it didn't work all the time. But Crawford, our college coach, he...
Please share the difference, if you could, the difference between...
Yeah. I think so. We did have one coach in particular who was like, girls just want to be coached like guys. And so they would really yell at us and scream at us like, you're sucking out there, pick it up. And it just felt like criticism, which you got a lot naturally, but when that was it just kind of wore you down. Whereas like our coach Crawford, he only had daughters. And so there's a difference between you're sucking, come on, you can do better, I know you can. But then he would also take that to let's get going, let's find energy, let's keep this up, not you're sucking, do better. And so I think guys just responded differently because the competitive difference between men and women, at least in our experience with basketball, was they just kind of go at it and they fight with each other, and girls kind of strategize a little bit more. It's more of a mental game, because if you mess up, you feel, I mean, not that guys can't, but it was more of like, let's encourage these girls to do better because we know they can, not you suck.
So less ego, less negative motivation.
Yeah.
Okay. Interesting.
So I guess I'll go next. I would say that athletics really taught me and showed me that I'm more resilient than I think I am. So you naturally face adversity in athletics when you're losing or when you're behind. But then, also like Jess and I experienced injuries too. And then it's disappointing, and it's a hard thing to go through.
Mm-hmm.
Especially when like you're faced with losing your season. And so I look back over my years, and it's actually, gosh, it's been a while since I even touched a basketball, but I think that sports taught me that I'm stronger than I think I am, and that I really can push through anything, that I have infinite strength and resiliency within me, even when I think I don't, I do.
Amazing.
And gosh, I think I would probably echo what Jesse said. Our college coach was pretty great. We had good coaches. We did have a lot of coaches in our career, but I think Coach Crawford was a great coach. He made us feel like our team was a family, and he was intense. He could get really intense, but he was really compassionate, and I really admired him. He was a great coach.
Yeah, he'd beat you down and then build you up. He wouldn't just beat you down and leave you there.
I actually learned something similar to you, Tori, just not actually like on athletic teams as a teenager and like through my early adulthood, but actually after. So once I transitioned out of sports, I completely stopped playing altogether. And it was my transition back into a level of activity like running marathons. And I got really into hiking, and I hiked Mount Whitney. And it was when I was doing all that, I was actually in a really bad relationship. So the combination of realizing, no, I could still accomplish all of these things physically, and then going through a tough relationship at the same time, I was like, no, I'm strong. Like I can do anything. And through realizing that physically, it actually made me realize it about myself in all aspects. But that transition from playing sports for me to just nothing at all was like, it was hard. It was probably bigger than transitioning from high school to college. The transition from being an athlete and playing on a team to not doing it at all was really hard. Maybe you guys can talk about your transitions outside of like finishing college athletics and then moving. I know, Tori, you work in athletics, so you kind of still have your hand in that, but maybe just talk a little bit about what it's been like transitioning out of it.
Initially it was freaking weird because you're like, oh my gosh, I have all this time. What am I going to do with all this time? Especially in college, you go from class to practice to either watching film or homework to bed, and then you repeat. So when you don't have all that basketball, you're like, oh my gosh, I have all this time on my hand. And then you had built-in exercise. So you never had to go to the gym. You never had to think about working out because you were going to go practice for 3 hours. So then that was a rude awakening, like, oh, I have to get movement. And so that was an interesting change too. I mean, just kind of on the physical side of it. How'd you say, Tori?
Yeah, it's funny that you'd say that, Taylor, because I remember like the day we didn't play all 4 years, and the day that I told my coach I wouldn't be going back for the next season, I felt really good. Like I felt empowered. I had just made this decision for myself because I was getting really burned out. And so I had a meeting with my coach and I told him I wouldn't be coming back for the following season. And I went to bed that night feeling really great. Like, this is my decision. And then I woke up the next day and I thought, oh my gosh, I'm not a basketball player anymore. What am I going to do with my life? And I think that's the one, maybe a downfall of sports, is it's so easy to wrap your identity up in that. And I think that's what I did. You know, it taught me so many great and wonderful things, but I realized that day after I decided not to play anymore, that I had wrapped up so much of my identity in being a basketball player and being a college athlete. So when I didn't have that anymore, I felt a little bit lost. Like I didn't know what was next. I didn't know what to do. So it was confusing for a little bit, and then, you know, I walked away and I didn't touch a basketball for years after that. And it was a weird transition. And then like Jess said, and I'm sure like you said, Taylor, you just have all these built-in workouts. So then like all of a sudden it's like, oh my gosh, I'm not active anymore. I need to figure out how to incorporate that into my day-to-day life. So the transition was hard at first. But then once I walked away from it, I realized there is so much more to life and me than basketball. So it was a bit of a journey.
Yeah. And I think with team sports too, like especially when you play competitively, and like you said, like collegiate sports, it's like your whole life. So all your friends are there. Like I always played with my sister. So my sister was there, and I actually stopped playing before my sister did. And so then I was like, but she's still a soccer player. And like now they're all like, she's still with all of our soccer friends. And so you really do get like your sense of identity from this group of girls that you just do everything with. You're together on the weekends, practice, school, everything.
Yeah, and it was weird too, because like our whole life was for college, like work hard to get the scholarship. So then it was this really weird reality of I have spent the past 10 years of my life working for this college scholarship, and now it's over. And like that was what defined the last 10 years of my life, was we go to tournaments, play games to get the scholarship. And then you got the scholarship and you were finished playing and you're like, oh my gosh, like that was it. That's what I did. And now it's over. And so it was almost like this subtle feeling of panic, like what am I supposed to work for now? Because that was all I worked for. But the one thing that I actually did really take with me, which I don't think anything else in life would have really carried over, is just that sense of passion and determination. Like, gosh, I remember specifically there was one game and it was a playoff game and we were trying to make it to regionals and we were down. And there was like 45 seconds left in the game. And I'm like, we're not losing this game. We cannot lose this game. And so you just like use everything that is within you to convince yourself we are not losing this game. And then you just throw yourself at it and you find that passion and it energizes you. And then we did end up winning that game. And so I've noticed that a lot in my life. In other situations, I can just like, I really can. And I do have the ability to convince myself like, I'm doing this, I'm getting through this, and I'm not going to lose. So that was one thing too that translated from collegiate sports to the real world that I don't think anything else really would have done, not in the same way.
Yeah, that's incredible. Yeah, it's incredible. I bet it, you know, just thinking about like spending your whole life, just all your energy, all your time into something that when it's over, it probably is a sense of there's a grieving, there's a loss or a sense of a loss of, well, who am I after this, you know, kind of a thing. I would have very much imagined that. But, you know, one of the things I've noticed just in the coaching work, life coaching, that whenever I'm working with people who have had athletics in their background, they always do better, always do well when it comes to life coaching, because I think some of the same skills tend to apply, like almost like what you were saying, like, you know, I am determined to shift this way of being. I'm determined. I'm not gonna let, you know, circumstances control my life. I'm going to take control of my life. I'm going to be empowered. I'm going to move forward. And that same drive tends to help, I think, people do well in life. That's why I'm a fan of athletics. So love that you guys have that experience. I would like to just shift gears a little bit and talk about, and this is something I'm, you know, it doesn't matter who you are and where, what's going on in your life. If you're living on the planet Earth, if you're a human being, you're going to experience, and this isn't like to be, scary or dreadful, to cause anybody to feel dread. But I feel like because life is a flow and it's rhythmic and there's seasons and there's movement, that part of life involves grieving. It's just it's a part of the human experience because things are in motion, and I spent years dreading any form of grief. Even when I was a kid, I remember even as a little kid, just thinking about the possibility of loss and dreading it. And so therefore it would affect me in the present tense. Just spent years doing that. And I've come to learn that, that grief, that grief is, even though we're all going to experience it, that it really does lead to empowerment, which may sound a little crazy, but what I would, I know all of us have went through some form of grief. I think people who obviously lose loved ones go through grief. People who go through divorce, you experience grief. People who just move from one chapter of your life to another chapter of your life, there's a form of grief in that. And there's different levels of it. But obviously some of the coaching work that we have done with you guys that I have done with you guys has been around grief, around processing grief and moving through it and moving into empowerment. And but even Taylor and I, I like to Taylor lost somebody really dear to her just before, several years ago, but that's a whole story we've talked about on our podcast. As far as just we actually attribute us coming together in our relationship through her grandfather who passed on many years ago. So that's a whole story in that. But there's just, grief has been the doorway to incredible. It's just been what I've experienced and what my wife has experienced, and I know what you guys are experiencing, that grief is not the end, but a beginning in many ways, and a doorway into a whole new life. And I just would like to open up open up the door for you guys to talk about that. You guys have been through, 2020 has been a year that for people, lots of change, lots of upheaval. Everybody is experiencing some form of disruption as a result of 2020. And you guys have been through quite the year yourselves. And so I would love to just invite you to talk about grief, the grief process for you guys, what you've experienced, and what has this past year been like for you in regards to grief. What are you learning about yourself? Maybe a couple parts of that question.
Sure. Well, I will start. So our dad, about 12 months ago, passed away pretty suddenly. He was diagnosed with brain cancer early October of 2019, and then he died a little over 3 weeks later. And it happened really quickly, and it was a pretty traumatic process. And at first, I didn't really, the thought of healing from grief didn't even cross my mind, because you're just in shock. And I remember feeling like I was in a dream and I was going to wake up eventually, and it didn't feel real. And then you just go into this autopilot mode, and I went back to work and I went back to school, and I didn't really think about it. And then I would say a couple months after his death, I kind of realized, after the initial shock had worn off, I realized that I had to do something with my pain, because it was kind of eating me alive, and I couldn't sleep, and I wasn't happy. I felt depressed. I felt like I have all these dreams and desires in my heart, and I really want those things to happen, and I want to experience those things, but I'm definitely not going to experience them the way that I want to if I don't heal. and I don't know what healing looks like, but I have to start somewhere. And so I started seeking help, and I started reaching out to people, and that's, one thing led to another, and that's eventually how I got connected with you, Jamal, and the coaching process. But I think that for me, grief has been it's been a teacher, and it's really taught me that grief has shown me who the truth of who I am. And I didn't know the depth of that before I lost my dad. It took the grieving process to really discover that. And I would also say that because I lost my dad, and because his death was so deep and so painful, healing from that grief has also revealed to me how to truly transform pain. And pain doesn't necessarily have to come from the loss of a loved one. We all have pain in some form or another. And there were painful things that happened in my life that I didn't even realize I needed to transform, or that I could transform. And it took losing my dad to realize that. So I would say that grief has been my teacher. And honestly, I'm very thankful for the process, because it's showed me the truth of who I am. And it's really helped me transform many different areas of my heart and my life. And I really feel like I'm a completely different person because of it. So I don't know. What do you have to say, Jess?
Well, my story, I mean, obviously it was my dad too, and we were pretty close. We weren't estranged. And so it was definitely a loss we weren't expecting. I would say it's funny, we talked about this in sports and basketball just not that long ago, but I felt like grief showed me how strong I was. And I didn't really know I had that in me, because my dad passed away the end of October of 19, and the New Year's Eve of that year, I got engaged. And it almost felt a little bit like motivation for me, not in a sense of like, let's hurry this up now, I'm ready to be over his death. But we had a really good friend close to us whose mother passed away, and grief destroyed her, and then her marriage ended in divorce. And I was aware of that, and I thought, okay, well, I have met someone whom I'm crazy in love with, who loves me, and I know that I have a decision here. I can stay in grief and I can let it define me, or I can choose to heal. And if I choose to stay in grief, that might come at the expense of Jaren. And I was not willing to let that happen. So grief felt, you mentioned like the empowerment of grief, which is so crazy that those two words can even be used in the same sentence, but I know that they can, and I'm living proof of that, because after I got engaged, I thought, I don't want to lose myself to this. I don't want to be defined by this, and I don't want to be the girl whose dad died forever. I wanted it to shape me and mold me in a positive way. And so with that came, I knew so I got engaged in January, and then I knew about May. I was really struggling with the crisis of faith, because we were raised in a very fundamental evangelical home. And it wasn't like we go to church on Sundays. It was like, it was our life. It was what we did. It was, I, for the longest time, wanted to be an evangelist. And so I knew, if I really want to heal, and I really want this pain to be something that doesn't haunt me years from now, then I think I have to deconstruct an entire belief system. And that felt like even more loss. Like that was paralleled to the loss of my dad. Just embracing that. And it took a long time to get there, which was honestly just a couple weeks before I ended up reaching out to you, Jamal, because it took me a long time to like ask myself, am I ready to like really deconstruct this belief system in order to heal, and know that the healing might look like never coming back to Christianity. And so then I kind of came to a place where I embraced that, and being intentional in that way was really freeing. And I did feel empowered through the grief. And I know that had my dad not passed away, I wouldn't have gotten there. And I'm really thankful for what I went through in that thought process and in that deconstructing, because I like where I'm at now. And I know that I guess I mean, there's no way to know for sure, but I would say I don't think anything else could have done that for me had I not experienced loss in the manner and way that I did. Cause like, I mean, we haven't even lost a grandparent yet, but we lost our dad, and it was just so shocking. And so I don't think anything else would have done that for me. So it does feel really empowering to be where I'm at today because of his loss, and to say boldly, yeah, I miss him, and I'm bummed that he's not in my life beyond a shadow of a doubt, but I don't hate who I am now, and I don't hate what I've gone through. I don't despise it, because it has been a really transformative and really freeing process.
Yeah, Tay, do you want to say anything about grieving?
Well, I kind of, Jess, you kind of touched on it. Like, my deconstruction process was really, my grandfather passing was kind of the catalyst of that, because I too grew up in a conservative Christian family, and the thought of my grandfather, who was the most amazing person in the world, the idea that he was gone, and according to everything I grew up believing in, he burning in hell, it couldn't be. There was no way. And through that, I also deconstructed and found empowerment through that as well. And I know that had that not happened, like, I would have not deconstructed. And also, since his passing, I actually, because he was overseas when he passed, I actually feel closer. Like, he's constantly with me. And Jamal and I have talked about it before. Like, my grandfather took me to Spain, and that's where I found Jamal, and Jamal's never met him, and he feels it too. And there's pictures of him all over our house. And that was my big first loss in my family too. And I think it's beautiful for people to see and hear, like, your story too, because I don't think people ever pair grief and sadness with power and strength. And too, with like deconstruction, like, people don't see how powerful that can be in the role of our own growth and development, and what the catalyst for those can be. It can be anything.
Yeah, what's interesting is you're absolutely right. And one thing, it's funny, I just asked Tori this morning. And I know that to a lot of people who maybe aren't where I'm at, or who just haven't really lost someone, this might seem like a morbid thought, but I asked her this morning, I said, Tori, if you could go back and in time, and we could get dad back, and life would be exactly as it was before, but none of what's happened in our life now would have ever happened. We'd just, the exchange would be, we'd have dad, and we'd have him until he was 95. Would you go back? And she sat in silence, and she's like, I don't think I would. And I agree with her, because obviously we miss him. And, you still have those moments where you're taken by grief and it kind of knocks you off your feet. But it's exactly like what you said and what I said earlier. The person I've become because I've been through grief is not terrible. And it's something that I'm proud of. And I didn't know I had it in me. And I really like who I am and who I've become. And grief was definitely the reason for that awakening and that blossoming in my life.
Yeah, it's incredible. It's incredible. Well, I want to throw this out there. Because you guys have talked about finding your power, coming into, and what a statement, by the way. Just, I know that some people that haven't went through the grieving process may just be like, what do you mean you wouldn't trade it? In the sense you wouldn't go back. I know that can be hard. And obviously, you love your dad immensely and miss him, all of those things, but you've discovered something that you don't want to let go of, and that you're incapable of letting go of. And I would say that's your power. That's who it's you. It's your highest and truest self. It's your most empowered self. But I'd like for you, if you guys could just say something about empowerment. How would you describe or define or help? Like, if you were talking to somebody and they're saying, what are you talking about? Like, how would you understand? How would you be able to express what is empowerment? What does it mean to be empowered? What does it mean for you? What has been your experience with empowerment?
I'll start. I would say that for me, in this whole process, empowerment to me means that I always have a choice. And so, like when I was faced with, like, I would say back in February was when I really realized, okay, I could either stay here and be depressed and sad all the time and never heal, or I could not stay here. And for me, I decided to heal, and I decided to live even after I experienced this egregious death. And so I think empowerment to me is I always have a choice, like, even like, and it gives me back control. Like, I think we live so much of our lives outsourcing our power and our control. And the truth is that I have that. Like, my dad died, and it was terrible, and it was tragic, and it was sad, but it didn't have to control the rest of my life. I could choose to be happy again. I could choose to heal. I decided to heal. And so I think in this whole process, that has been what I've really learned about empowerment, is that I don't ever have to outsource my control or my power. I have that. I have a choice in everything. And that's one thing, Jamal, that I've really learned from you in this coaching process, that I always have a choice. And that to me is empowerment.
I would say I agree with everything that Tori just said, but one thing that I've kind of recognized again in coaching with you, Jamal, is you said once in a previous podcast that I think about all the time is, honoring my parents is really breaking free of that, their ways, for lack of a better term. And empowerment to me was realizing that, yes, I had a decision and a choice, but it was knowledge, it was learning, it was looking at my dad's life and recognizing I have the power to change that and to assure that that is not my story, and that this cycle doesn't continue. So it was more like empowerment to me is knowing and learning that the cycle can end, and that I can heal the trauma, and I can break the pain that did ultimately cause my dad a sickness and that did result in his death, which is a story all in and of itself. But I would say that it's knowing and learning from experience, and then taking that wisdom and moving forward, and creating your present and creating your future based on what you've learned.
Yeah, that's good. Taylor, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, I think it's really beautiful that you guys have been on this journey together. Because I know like we all deal with grief differently. And I think just because of it being your father and it being like that kind of a close relationship, just to have someone to be on that journey with, and especially as sisters, I'm almost a little jealous, because I've found that Jamal has been that person that I've shared my journey with, but luckily he's already like 10 steps ahead of me, so he's kind of pulling me along. But I'm kind of jealous of the beauty of being able to be on a journey like that with your twin, with your sister, with someone who you've done everything with. Like, no one's left behind. You guys go on this journey together.
I think it's definitely made that process easier. I mean, grief is not easy, but having Jesse and being on that journey together, it's been really helpful. We've encouraged each other, and it makes me feel like I'm definitely not alone in this. Like, we both have been through the highs and the lows together. And so, yeah, I mean, it's made the process a little bit easier.
Yeah. So, and if you could speak to people out there, because there's everybody listening to this is either grieving or going to be grieving. It's just how life works. What is there any encouragement? How would you encourage people in this process? Like, what is there anything that you would like to say to people that you would like them to know as a result of you being on, been down this road this last year? What would you like to impart to others?
I would want people to know that there's truly tremendous good that can come from such terrible pain. Like, you don't have to be afraid of the pain, because there's really truly good that can come from it. I started out this process thinking, how do I live in a world that my dad's not in, and how will I ever be happy again, and how will I ever move on from this? And I stayed there for a while, and I just remember thinking, I'm never going to get out of this. Like, this is just marked the rest of my life. But then you really can heal, and pain can be transformed into this beautiful thing that you become so proud of. And I never would have imagined that I would get to this place where I can honestly say that I'm really thankful for this journey and this process, because I love who I've become, and I love what I've learned, and my relationships are healthier because of it. My life is better because of it, and I'm stronger because of it. And so I would just tell people that, we all have pain. Everybody has pain. Pain connects us all. And at some point, everybody's going to grieve something. But I would say that it's really not anything to be afraid of. It's going to be a journey, and it's going to maybe be hard at times, certainly. But there's just tremendous good that can come from deep tragedy.
I would say something very similar. But one thing that I would really just encourage people to do is to just embrace the pain, and to not harbor it, and to not just let it sit within you unattended to, because then that will manifest in ways that you really don't want to deal with later. But one thing that I would say, which I found to be so true, is you're not alone. And we do a really good job at convincing ourselves we are. And one story in particular where I thought, oh my gosh, that's so amazing, is it was shortly after my dad passed away, and I thought, I am never going to be able to talk about my dad without crying. That just won't be my reality. And so I just didn't want to talk about it. And I had gone out to my husband's studio with him, and I just kind of was, bottled up. He owns a studio with a couple named Chris and Corey. And Corey came up to me, and she's like, Jesse, I'm so sorry about your dad. I lost my dad when I was 25, just before my wedding. And I thought, oh my gosh, she knows how I feel. And I was never going to bring it up. And I was never going to say anything, because I think we are pretty good at convincing ourselves at just staying quiet. And we tend to isolate in serious situations of sadness. And that is fundamentally a lie. Even if somebody doesn't know what you're going through specifically, everybody knows pain, and everybody knows sadness. So just don't bottle it up. Just let it out, because I think when you do that, the right people will come. They just will. It's just what happens.
Yeah, I've seen. Thank you guys for sharing that. A couple of what I've noticed in people tend to approach grief with either this denial, like they just, okay, I don't want to feel it, move on, next, just kind of move forward in life, and so they learn how to shove it away deep down inside, and sometimes that can lead to like medicating it, like where you're just drinking, or trying to cover it with drugs or alcohol, or trying to just move into relations, like just trying to whatever, just kind of numb it. That tends to be an approach that a lot of folks go down. They go down that road. And the other part that I've seen is that people, and you guys mentioned this, that it becomes your identity, to the point where it's like, this is who I am. I'm the person who has went through this situation or lost this person, and it's just perpetual grief. And they'll say, I've heard people say, I will just never get over this. I'm never going to get over this. And it becomes this, literally this life sentence of grief, and both of which don't lead to healing, both approaches. But what I've really just applaud you guys and admire just your approach has been neither one of those. You've tackled it. You've moved into it. I mean, you've faced this this thing that, I'm sure at times has felt like it was going to overtake you, and you're living proof that it is not overtaking you. And you can heal and move. You can transcend the grief, and it doesn't define you.
Yeah, that's true. And I remember, so the day that my dad passed away, I uh, I was at work and I was in my boss's office, and he was really great through that whole journey because him and his wife had lost a son several years earlier. And so I remember I was in his office and I just found out that my dad passed away, and I was crying and I was in shock. And my boss said two things to me that I have not forgotten. And the first thing he said was, um, pain connects us all. You know, everybody has pain, so don't be afraid to share it if you want to. But the second thing he told me was, he said, don't be afraid to give yourself grace. And he said that when he was walking through his grief, he said that he goes, I received a lot of grace, and I allowed myself to walk through that and manifest that, whatever that looked like. I felt everything. And I think that really has helped me in my journey, is that I've given myself grace to feel everything, to cry when I need to cry, to scream when I need to scream, to be mad when I feel angry, to not hide those away, because that is what healing is. Like Jamal, you always say, what you feel, you heal. And that is so true. Like you really, if you want to release that pain and that trauma, you have to feel it. And so that's another thing I would tell people is, don't be afraid to feel it. That's part of being human. It's part of the process of loss and grief. We have emotions and we're allowed to express them. It doesn't matter who you are or where you came from. Feel everything and give yourself grace to feel that, because that is really what transforms you. That's where transformation takes place.
Oh, so well said. Good. So good. So good. Well, what I'd like to do, I want to shift gears a little bit. And I want to say a word. Okay. I'm just going to say a word, and you guys, so you can say whatever you want. You have a platform, to say whatever you want, to speak to whoever's listening to this. You can say whatever you want about the topic. There's no off limits here. Okay. I'm just going to say a word, and you just speak from the heart, whatever comes to mind. Tell us your thoughts on it. There's no wrong answers. You can just speak your heart. And, all right. So, and this is for everybody, and Taylor, that includes you. So you can jump in here too. Any word, any thoughts that come, with
Lightning
this word.
round.
Lightning round. Okay. Okay. So word number 1, leadership.
Ooh, I'll go. This is Tori. I'll say that leadership to me is absolutely pointing people back to the truth of who they are. Just like reflecting back to them the truth of who they are. That is what leadership is to me.
Oh my gosh. Wow.
I mean, yeah, that one was easy. Tori and I talk about that a lot. It is absolutely reminding people the truth of who they are. But I think it's like getting specific. Leadership is leading by example, that you have it all in you and you don't need outside anything to create an emotion in you that it already exists within you. And that to me is leadership, when somebody's living that way, and it points people back to themselves.
Yeah, I work with students, and as an educator, it really is about leadership, is about teaching kids and just anyone in general that the only thing keeping you from everything is yourself. Like nobody else stands in your way. So you're the only one who could put limitations on yourself. And part of that is just feeling like understanding who you are, like knowing who you are, knowing your inherent goodness and your power. And leadership is just that person. And I think, like, especially with coaches, we've all had someone in our lives or teachers that was able to reflect that back to us. And Jamal is always really good about that. I get that from him. For me, is just being a reflection of them, like their goodness and who they are to themselves, and letting them see it through you, because you can't always see it in yourself.
Totally. I have a friend that, he used to carry around these business cards, and on the back of it, it just said, "I see people." It was like his job description. "I see people." I love that. I was like, To me, that's leadership. I love what everybody said about leadership. And to me, leadership is somebody who sees you, because I remember, it was a handful of people, like especially early on when I was in high school, maybe a little bit earlier too. Just a handful of people that could truly see me, and I knew they saw me, and that awoken me to who I was, just their seeing of me. It's when we're seen that we then begin to awaken and see ourselves. So powerful. I love that. Okay, so word number 2, spirituality.
I can start that one. I have a good friend who has always said, he said this for years, and it meant something different to me more so than now. But spirituality to me is when the way of your being matches the truth of your being. And when your actions and how you live your life mirrors the truth of who you are. It's not a list of rules. It's not a set of do's and don'ts. Ultimately, I think that really...
Can you repeat that? Repeat that.
Yeah, it's when the way of your being matches the truth of your being. And I think there's a lot of stuff that we do that does not match the truth of who we are. So spirituality to me is anything that is the way of your being matching the truth of your being.
That's a mic drop. Way of your being.
I need to write that down, and I'm going to put it on something for Jamal for Christmas, because I can tell that he's going to want to use that.
That's Paul Young, is it? Didn't Paul say that?
Yeah. He always said that, and to me, it meant something different in the past, but recently, this year especially, I have just, that's been my I guess quote to live by, is when the way of your being matches the truth of your being, which is really everything we've ever worked on in coaching. That to me is spirituality.
Unbelievable.
Okay, I guess I'll go next. I really would have to agree with Jess on everything. Spirituality to me, really, it kind of is the same thing that I said for leadership, but for me, spirituality is really just this journey of self-discovery, of discovering who I really am and who I was created to be. And I also think that spirituality is discovering our inherent goodness. And I mean, a lot of people don't like hearing that, but that's what spirituality is to me. And I think that that's where we're all on a journey of discovering that. And I think that it's just this infinite journey of discovering who we are.
Tori, are you saying that there are people out there that don't like to hear about their own inherent goodness? Is that?
Oh,
is that
yeah. Those damn evangelicals.
Yeah, actually, we had a what was it, like 2 days ago? Tori made a comment about like, yeah, I don't believe I'm bad.
Yeah, I posted
and,
this
my
quote.
gosh.
Oh my gosh. I posted
it just
quote.
was funny how much response that generated going against that. And it was interesting. It gave us a good laugh.
It always does. I remember when my niece was born, I was holding her in the hospital with my mom and dad, who have since then have in their own little ways. I don't know if they would identify it as deconstructing. And I'm holding my niece, and I was like, there's no way this is a child that was born into this world with sin. She is beautiful and perfect and completely good. And my dad was like, what are you talking about? I was like, look at her. Like, how could you say that? She's goodness in human form.
Yeah.
And that was a baby, and people still took issue.
I know. Isn't that the most amazing thing? It just baffles me, really. But I can't be so hard on them, because I definitely did live that truth at one point in my life.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And for me, that's what spirituality is. It's just this journey of like self-discovery of who we are created to be, and what this experience can be for us, that we are good, that we are desired, that we are inherently significant. And it's really funny to me because, like Jess said, the other day I posted this quote from this book that I really liked, and it was about how we're inherently good. And a lot of people, I experienced a lot of backlash from that quote. And I remember thinking, like, it was kind of funny to me because all these people were commenting and saying, like, truly defending the fact that we're these children of wrath and desperately wicked and deceitful above all things. And I just remember thinking, wow, that's not true. That's not real. And for me, spirituality is discovering the infinite goodness that I have within me, and that I'm fundamentally desired and beautiful and good and significant. And spirituality is that journey of discovery.
Yeah, I feel like now, just in my process, like I feel like growing up in the church, like spirituality, they almost put it in a box. Like you have a framework and spirituality falls within that, and there's nothing else. And I've noticed recently that like this journey that we would call like spirituality, like just our own journeys, like it's everywhere. Like my friend just had a baby, and I was holding, his name's baby Walter, and I was holding baby Walter and just sitting there with him, just what the process I was going through. And then today I'm listening to Matthew McConaughey's new book, Greenlight, and he's saying stuff, and I'm getting the same, I'm learning the same things from holding an infant to listening to Mr. All right, read his new book. And I think that's the beauty and like the deconstruction and what we all learn in that process is that like spirituality like is everything. I think, is it Jamal, is it you that says isness? No.
Actually it's borrowed from Eckhart Tolle.
Okay, yeah, because Pete Holmes says it a lot. I listen to too many podcasts, but yeah, just like is like all of this is spirituality. There's not it's everything.
Yeah, everything is spiritual. Like, I mean, I think that's the title of a new book. I don't remember
Rob
the
Bell.
author, but yeah, Rob Bell. I haven't read it, but maybe I should, because I do believe that everything is spiritual. Taylor's right. You know, like we're like yes, it's this journey of self-discovery within me, but also I think that everything is spiritual, and everything can reflect back to us goodness and desire, and you know, anything from like a new infant to the beauty of nature. You know, everything is spiritual, and everything can teach us, and we can see spirituality in everything.
Wow, so much goodness there. Lots of mic drops. Lots of mic drops. That's fantastic. Yeah, nothing will bring out the knives or the it's one of the most offensive things you could ever tell somebody is how good they are. Like people don't like it. It's offensive to the ego that needs to loathe something, you know, and to feel bad, because I think it was Marianne Williamson or somebody who said that it's not that we're inadequate. We're not really afraid of our inadequacy. We're really afraid that we are adequate beyond measure. I'm kind of butchering the quote there, but we really are afraid of our greatness. You know, what if Jesus was right? You know, what if we are gods? You know, what if, I mean, I'm not, I didn't say that. Jesus said that, but I'm just saying, like, what if he's right about that? Like, that could be really a big deal for the implications of our lives and humanity, you know? So
Yeah, absolutely. And I think too, what we've found in our grieving process, because mind you, we're evangelical Christians, so everybody who came to us for the most part was that way. And I think true spirituality and being good, it's a reality a lot of people don't want to face, because if they accept that maybe I'm good, then everything crumbles, and then you don't have much certainty to hold on to and it's safe. So let's just stay there because it's safe.
yeah, it's hard to be a victim. Hard to be a victim, and when you're in your divine essence and awareness, you know. So for sure, yeah. So awesome. Okay, so are you ready for the next word here?
Yep.
Yes.
That's a good one. This is a good one right here. Word number 3, healthcare.
Healthcare in what context, or just any context?
Whatever context you want to talk about it.
Can I think I'll start this one. For me, the word healthcare just on, I also in deconstruction process actually started that journey with a lot of health issues, and then met Jamal like at my lowest of low with my health. I had a seizure, I couldn't drive, chronic breathing issues, all of this stuff. And then I met Jamal, and slowly but surely started realizing that healthcare is not a physical thing. I know, especially like growing up playing sports, like you break bones, you pull muscles, you get sick. Like healthcare seems like just such a physical word. And now I've realized that all of my physical health is connected to my emotional and my spiritual health. And if something is misaligned, like if I am not processing something, it's gonna affect me physically. And good thing I have Jamal to remind me when all of a sudden I feel like I'm catching a cold. He's like, what happened? What do you need to process? And just that healthcare to me is you can't separate the physical from the spiritual and emotional. They're completely connected. And especially if you don't take care of your spiritual and your emotional life, your physical life is going to suffer as part of it.
Yeah, absolutely. I could not agree with you more. And that was another revelation that I had in losing my dad, is really recognizing, okay, why did he get sick? And really processing that on a really deep level. Because, every doctor, every nurse was like, we don't know what caused this. And I'm like, really? We don't? So looking at his life, and my dad, he had ample amounts of unresolved trauma, and he was just such a broken individual, and he never dealt with it. And I'll never be convinced for a second that didn't cause a sickness in him. We have reason to believe that maybe he was violated as a child, and that was also something that was never dealt with. And so he gets sick. And what I've realized through this whole process is, when you really don't process things, and you don't feel, and you don't allow yourself to heal, you do get sick. And I think that shows when you look at our modern healthcare system. This is not true for every case, for every situation, but when you go to a doctor, you go to get a pill, and then you leave the office with medication. And what's the only thing they're guaranteeing you? That you'll be sick forever. If you come to see us, we'll send you home with pills, and we promise you'll need those pills forever. So that's not healthcare. That's quite the opposite. So then, if that's not healthcare, what is healthcare? And so then that for me was a journey of really asking, why did my dad get sick in the first place, which has also helped with my grief. So that to me is healthcare, processing and feeling and allowing yourself to heal that trauma. It's everything you just said.
All right. So how much time do we have? I'm just kidding, but
You're good. You're good. Speak your truth.
All right. Well, I echo everything that Taylor and Jesse said, but this is something I'm really passionate about, because my undergrad was in public health. So during my studies, I heard everything from, like universal health care. Let's, like everybody needs healthcare. Everybody needs this. Everybody needs that. Let's push this. Let's push that. Let's give everybody access to everything. And, for me, I just got to this point where I realized, are we just taking care of sick people? It seems like everybody that's like needing healthcare, everybody's sick. That's why they need it, right? So to me, healthcare is actually, healthcare in the Western sense that we know it, is really just sick care. So to me, healthcare really just starts within. I think I am a huge proponent of the mind-body connection. And I think that that's really where everything starts. Being a really healthy individual starts from within, the way that you see yourself, the healing inner trauma and pain. That's really where healthcare begins. And there's other things too. I also am really passionate about diet and food. And I think that I personally tried as much as I can to be plant-based. And I think that there's a lot of different aspects to healthcare. It's a pretty broad topic, but I think that healthcare is really just, it starts within, and it starts with healing your emotions. Really, I think that's like one of the biggest things I've learned, is that if you don't heal your emotions first, if you don't heal trauma and pain that you've just kept stuck up within you, it's going to just sit there, and it's going to make you sick, and then you're going to experience disease because of it. So really, that's where it starts for me, is healing that inner trauma, that inner pain. And then from there, there's a bunch of different avenues like diet and other things. But the healthcare that we experience in our country is not healthcare, it's sick care. We're taking care of sick people. We're tending to sick people, and we're not really healing them of anything. So
yeah, so well said. So well said. Yeah, I always say, especially in election, we're still in the midst of election season, and we'll see what happens. But, every time elections, roll around, we're hearing about universal health care and maybe, and providing health care. And I agree. So totally. It's like, don't call it healthcare. America is one of the sickest countries in the world. And really what we're talking about is access to drugs. We want cheap access to drugs, or government subsidized access to drugs. Because typically that's what, again, I know, people are dealing with real issues here, but it's sick care or sick management. And that's what people want. But if you want access to healthcare, like universal healthcare is available to all people. It's just like,
absolutely.
it's in you. But I heard a doctor say, and this was really interesting to me. I heard this doctor say, he said, you can only get sick. He's like, first of all, our healthcare industry, we're kind of indoctrinated with this belief that sickness is normal. It's like, it's not normal. Health is normal. So you want to start with the right starting point. Health is normal. And really, you only get sick. There's like 4 ways you can get sick. And he said the first way is through injury. Like if you physically get injured, like you're in an accident or you get hurt somehow and your body's not functioning correctly because you're actually physically injured. That could lead to health problems, obviously. Second, he said, if there's some form of starvation or malnutrition. So if you're not getting the right nutrients, and that kind of speaks to what you're talking about, Tori, with diet. If the diet is off, that can lead to health problems. Third thing he talked about was being poisoned. Most of us are being poisoned unconsciously. We're not aware of it, but things that are introduced into our environment unconscious or without our knowledge are causing people to get sick. And this is one of the reasons I believe that the United States remained one of the sickest nations on the earth, despite our technological advances in the healthcare industry, because we're being poisoned. So, and that, of course, that can get into a whole other, stream of things with environmental policy versus, you're talking about nutrition and all different kinds of things, but people are being poisoned. And then the fourth way people get sick is through emotional disturbances and unprocessed emotional health or emotional energy disturbances that haven't been cleared. And if you factor those 4 things in, that's what makes people sick. But then the opposite of that is also the key to health, obviously. So diet and making sure you're not getting injured and you're not being poisoned and that you're processing emotional disturbances.
Yeah. And I think honestly, what those truths do is it's like what we were talking about earlier. It's the sense of empowerment. Like you can take your health into your own hands. I believed for the longest time, like, oh my gosh, like cancer is so random. I hope I don't get cancer. Like it's just eeny, meeny, miny, mo. And when you really understand the truth of what is health care outside of our Western ideology of what that looks like, it's really empowering knowing. I look at my dad, and he had unresolved emotional trauma. He worked in the orchards since the time he was like 12 years old. He was breathing in that spray. And like those, and his diet wasn't great either. But you look at those things and then, you can respond like, oh, I can change this. And that to me is healthcare. It's not, oh, I'm hoping that this outside person, this third person who wears a white coat can set me free and give me health. It empowers you to know I can take this back and I can be healthy if I want to be healthy.
I've seen this with my sister, and I think it's funny because they do a lot of like testing with twins, because we're supposed to be, especially with like health stuff and all of that, because we're supposed to be the same. And I don't know how much I should say in case she listens to this. It's okay. She'll I'll get a text message later from her maybe. But I noticed it with my sister and I. And so my sister and I process things very differently. I would say I actually process them, and I'm not sure that she fully processes them. And like my grandfather passed away from pancreatic cancer. And then I want to say like 4 years later, my sister had to have surgery to have a precancerous cyst removed off of her pancreas. And then my sister's had like more anxiety and she has back problems. And so especially when she had the pancreatic cyst stuff, I was like, I need to get tested. Why aren't they testing me? Like she had to have a colonoscopy and an endoscopy. And I was like, why aren't we doing this to me? We're twins. And now I realize I'm like, I probably will never have any of that ever happen to me, even though we're identical twins, because like we eat, I would say 99% of a vegan diet. Um, I am constantly working on myself and like processing my emotions and trauma. And like my health journey is completely different, like physically, than my identical twin sister. And it's like, how could that be? Like we've experienced everything together, and it's just how we've processed trauma and how we've developed spiritually and emotionally through these last few years. And so I don't get worried anymore.
Yeah, I think that's another like a huge thing that why people are so sick all the time is because they have this fear. Well, and it's obviously unprocessed emotion, but you even look at like the pandemic that we're experiencing. Everybody is so afraid, and um, really the truth is that like we're outsourcing, like kind of wrapping back to what we said earlier. Like I think that empowerment is like control, and the fact that we always have a choice, we need to stop outsourcing that, because in our healthcare system, we've outsourced that to doctors and procedures and drugs, and we're giving away our control and our power of our health. And the truth is that it all starts within. Like that's why Jess and I have seen examples of that in our lives, where people end up experiencing physical manifestations of things that they've been fearful of for quite some time, because it's unprocessed trauma and emotions that they haven't felt or dealt with. And then it ends up manifesting in their body, and it's like this fear and this emotion that they don't deal with. And then they outsource, then they get afraid, and then they're like, well, I don't know what to do, I can't control this, so they outsource it to doctors and drugs, and it's just a mess. It's honestly a mess. But like you said,
Yeah.
the empowering part of this all is that we, like what Jamal said, we all have access to universal health care. Health starts within. There is nothing to be afraid of. Health is within. Like we have all we need within us. It's about processing trauma and the mind body connection, and really there's nothing to be afraid of. We all have universal health care.
So good. So good. Well, okay. Last question, guys. Last question. Um, Life coaching.
Life coaching is, I think everybody needs it. I think that absolutely everyone can benefit from life coaching, because, well, especially with like you, Jamal, it's this person who steps into your world, who sees where you're at and is like, okay, this is the direction we're going to go if you want to go this way. And it's really putting the ball back in your court, but it's allowing you to see things in ways that you would probably never see had you not gone through life coaching. It's somebody who can help you who's not going through what you're going through. Like Jamal didn't know my dad, he didn't lose his dad, and so he can be that outside source that comes in and is like, okay, well, here's a different thought, or here's a different perspective. The biggest thing that life coaching has done for me is change my perspective. Like in every situation, my perspective is different now. And I think that alone, that change in my thought process was really due to life coaching. How I approach every situation, whether it's like through finances or just personal issues or stress, everything is a change in perspective. And once you change that paradigm, your whole world changes. And life coaching did that for me. So I tell everybody, you should see a life coach.
I would say that life coaching has helped me completely transform. So I first started, when I first started healing, I guess I would say, of my grief and my pain, I started seeing a counselor, like a grief counselor earlier in the year, months before I started seeing Jamal in coaching. And I would say that my counselor really helped me process pain. But it didn't really help me transform anything. And I got to this place where I kind of felt, even though counseling was good, I kind of felt a little bit stuck. Like I had made some progress, but I didn't feel like I was totally free. And so when I started life coaching, I really just believe it fundamentally transformed me. Like it helped me transform my pain and my thoughts and my opinion of myself and my opinion of the world. Like everything transformed through the coaching process. And I really do believe that everyone could benefit from it. It's totally different than counseling.
Yeah, and it's kind of following up with what Tori said, is we both do have the parallel of we started off this journey in grief counseling, which was not a negative experience, but it didn't set us free, and it didn't we stayed in grief, but there's like a positive spin to it, but we never really graduated from grief. And so what's interesting about us is that we do have that both experiences of, hey, we did grief counseling for months and then we went to life coaching, and life coaching is what utterly transformed every aspect of who we are.
I can just highly recommend marrying a life coach. It's 24/7 life coaching in this house.
Well, it has its drawbacks.
Yeah.
It has its drawbacks. I'm sure
I catch myself saying, Jamal, I need a husband, not a coach right now. Can we please process this later?
Totally. There's a whole conversation I'm sure we could have about that. But I would say for me, obviously I'm biased because I am a coach, but only reason I am a coach is because it saved my life. The life coaching process. I was done with life, and totally chronically unempowered. Had no idea who I was or the power I possessed or the ability to shape the world that I had in my being. So it, definitely obviously life changing. So guys, thank you so much for this conversation. You guys rock. Your naturals, like you're fantastic. So, but I also I'm excited about listeners listening to this, because this is gold. This is information that you can't pay for. It's earned. It's stuff you've experienced and you've went through, and this is just absolutely. I just believe that people are going to be really, really benefited by what you guys had to say and share here. And to the listeners, let us know. I'd love to hear from you. I mean, feel free to drop me an email, Jamal@jamaljavanji.com. You can always also go to my website and let me know. You can, shoot me a message either way, and let me know how this conversation with Jessica and Tori and Taylor, how this conversation has spoken to you, what your takeaway is from this. And I'd love to have a dialogue with you about that. But guys, thank you for being so generous with your evening and with your story. I know it's not easy, but so beneficial. And I've been so impressed with you guys and your just the tenacity which you're approaching this work. And it's inspiring. And no doubt in my mind, you guys are changing the world, and your future is full of lots of significant things. I can totally hear that. And I wanted to talk a little bit as we wrap up here, something that we have not talked about, but Jessica is a musician, is a significant, profound musician. And again, we could probably spend a whole conversation on just that itself, but and there's a lot in that. But you and your husband is a sound engineer, right? And
yes, yeah, he's an audio engineer.
Mm-hmm.
And he's kind of worked a few different places, but he's a really great studio here in North Idaho. It's a destination studio.
Awesome. Well, you guys are in the midst of putting together a record, right? A Christmas record that will be out within a week or so, right?
Yeah, Thanksgiving weekend. Everybody should listen. I'm very proud of it. It really turned out, oh my gosh, so much better than I ever could have imagined. We hired a whole orchestra to do almost all the songs, and it was such a great experience.
And you're the vocalist, right?
Yes, I'm the vocalist. It's my album. My name's on it, which is funny because I have done the least amount of work, but it's my name's on it. But I sing 3 songs with an incredible vocalist. His name, we call him BC. His name's Brandon Kate, and he also has great music, and his love is jazz. He really has that kind of Michael Bublé sounding voice, and so I was so fortunate to do some songs with him. So he was in the band Barcelona for a time. I don't know if people are going to be familiar with that, but then our composer, who I really just give like the majority of the credit to, is Matt Henson. Oh my gosh, he's amazing. We got him for a steal. He should have charged so much more, because the way he crafted and constructed the songs is second to none. And the album has turned out way better than I ever thought it would.
Well, that's so cool. And so the record comes out next week, and it's a Christmas album, right? So it's jazz, got the jazz feel to it, but it's a Christmas album. Is there a name? Like, how can people find it?
Yeah, so the album's called December. It will be on all streaming platforms. It comes out Thanksgiving weekend. We do have a few CDs because we think they might really take off. So we invested in a few CDs. And yeah, all streaming platforms, Spotify, Apple Music, Amazon, really anywhere you can stream music, you can find it.
Okay, so it's called the
December.
December.
Yeah, it's called December, and it's Jessica Joy is what's the artist. I'm the artist, Jessica Joy.
Jessica Joy. Okay, and awesome. And December, and will be out next week, right?
Yeah, crazy.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Okay, so I don't know how to do it here with the setup here, but what I'm hoping to be able to do for the on the podcast platform when people listen to this, like on iTunes, is to actually have a clip of your of one of your songs on there, so people maybe we'll play out the podcast with one of your songs.
Totally.
So
yeah, that'd be great.
Fantastic. Awesome.
Totally.
Well, guys, thank you so much, and to all the listeners, we appreciate you. Thank you for listening. And until next time, take care.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.